so much of philosophy and theology and psychology, there's a major movement taking place from theories that are all content to process. And the problem is that in philosophy and theology, they talk about it, but they don't have a body process to do it. And what Gendlin and others are introducing in psychology is an actual process that enables us to do and to experience this movement in ourselves. And we're identifying that movement as the body life of spirit, or congruence. So there's a lot of major connections here. We can understand this movement a lot better if we understand what happens inside us when it stops, or when it gets blocked. And this is where Gene Gendlin and Carl Rogers have made a major contribution. It's a contribution that really has not yet been discovered by people in the field of addictions, because they have identified, and Gendlin himself has identified, the precise psychological mechanism that locks addictive patterns and patterns of dominance in place and makes them so resistant to change. This is something that operates on automatic pilot. He calls it a process skipping structure. And there is not a single person in this room who doesn't have one or many inside. And so let me begin by sharing an example of one of my own process skipping structures. About 20 years ago, my mother was becoming rather infirm, and it was difficult for her to live in her apartment. So I looked around for one of these life care facilities. But I can remember getting her all set up in her apartment and getting everything just right. She was all settled, and I said goodbye to her, and she just kind of had that, you know, I don't want you to go, but she's English. And I can remember as I walked out that door, the guilt just started flooding up all through me. And I went home, and the guilt was there for a couple of days. And then, of course, the phone calls started. You know, I'm not sure I want to live here. Can I go back to my old apartment? And finally, the guilt just kept building and building and building until I couldn't take it anymore. And what I did to alleviate the guilt is I went to visit my mother. And as soon as I visited her, she was happy, and I was happy that she was happy, and I could feel the guilt go down. And then about 3 weeks later, there was another call. And as the guilt rose up, I'd reach a point where I couldn't take it anymore, and then I'd go visit my mother, and the guilt would go down. Well, I live over 150 miles from San Francisco, and the two of us own the car. And he started looking at me, and because I'd make these visits, but I would still, guilt, go visit mother. And then he would start confronting me. Ed would say, you know, you really need to sit with that guilt and be with it. And I'm English, and this is family. And family is nobody else's damned business. Whenever I went to San Francisco, I was not in touch with the fact that I was not going to San Francisco to visit my mother. I was going to San Francisco to get the monkey off my back. And I'm sure my mother knew that or felt it at some level. And I knew it at some level. Well, finally, one day came, and I guess I had just been to San Francisco, and another guilt surge came. And I sat with myself, and I thought, you know, I really got to take some time and be with this. And so what did I do? I held the guilt. Okay, so what I had been doing, I would feel the guilt up here, and then instead of going into and through the guilt and holding the guilt, I would go visit my mother. But this time I finally went into and through, and I held the guilt. Then, of course, the first thing that came was a whole lot of anger. and a whole lot of unfinished and unresolved childhood issues. And I just sat with and I held those in a caring way, and I let the story unfold. And at a very crucial time in my own growing up, my parents were having difficulty in their marriage, and all of this was there, so I was sent away to boarding school. I hated that. I went away when I was 7, and I came back when I was around 11 or 12. And it's that, and I had a lot of feeling about it. My mind had come to its own resolution of this issue, but my body's carrying of that was still 7 years old, you see. So the guilt would keep coming. And when I sat with the experience of all the unfinished childhood dependency issues, that gradually, slowly, that began to change, the inner landscape. And then the absolutely fascinating thing that occurred was when I went to visit my mother, then I was no longer there to get the monkey off my back, but I was there genuinely to be with her. And two human beings can begin to establish a relationship. And it's a wonderful thing as a child when you relate to a parent, when you can grow through to the point where you relate to that parent as a friend. Look at that experience. What I would do is I would feel guilt. I came near to and began to feel that guilt. Instead of going into it and through it to hold the more of the story, the anger, the unresolved childhood issues, instead of doing that, I would immediately skip off into an activity that would numb or ease that experience, the pain of that experience. Now, some people, when they come to and feel that guilt, they'll take a drink. Some people, when they feel the guilt, they'll get busy and do something. Some people, like myself, will do something to please somebody. You see, every time they get near to the feeling that is difficult, they will skip the process and skip off into an activity or a drug or a narcotic that will numb or in some way ease the pain or the discomfort of the feeling that I don't like inside my body.
So it's right always at that point, that's the key point right there, where we get into doing something that eventually we become addicted to. It becomes, in that sense, the substitute for entering into and becoming congruent inside with what's real in my life. Namely, I feel guilty or whatever it is, you see. So some people take coffee, some people turn the TV on, other people go to work, other people, pick up a book and read it, other people fall asleep. Some people get headaches and then they take an aspirin or something, or whatever it is. When you can understand this and identify it in yourself, understand it psychologically, and see how common it is, then what you have to stand back and look at is now but your growth practices and the religious practices helping me to own and enter into the truth of myself and become more holy, more whole, or is in fact the way I practice my religion process skipping. That is really important because a lot of us do not only things for other people, good things, but we do them for the wrong inside reasons. And we don't know that. That it is not helping us and in the long run isn't helping those other people. For us to be doing these things as a way of literally escaping from ourselves? Or is it something that helps me own the truth of myself in my daily life? And consequently, clearing me inside of those blocked places so that I can live with that truth and be connected.
Yeah. This process skipping mechanism is the pathology that affects spirit. It affects the unfolding of your life. What makes it so difficult to change and why it is so powerful is because it's on automatic pilot. In other words, as soon as you come up and get close to the feeling that you don't like, you're off to the bottle, you're off to the TV, to work, to drugs, to meditation, to church. And that doesn't mean church is bad, it's just some people abuse church as a way to process guilt.